White knight marches to f3. Black pawn marches to d5. White pawn marches to g3. Black pawn marches to g6. White bishop marches to g2. Black bishop marches to g7. White kingside castling. Black pawn marches to e5. White pawn marches to d3. Black knight marches to e7. White knight marches to d2. Black kingside castling. White pawn marches to a3. Black pawn marches to c5. White pawn marches to e4. Black knight marches to c6. White rook moves sideways to b1. Black pawn marches to d4. White knight marches to h4. Black bishop marches to e6. White pawn marches to f4. Black pawn captures pawn at f4. White pawn captures pawn at f4. Black pawn marches to f5. White pawn marches to b4. Black pawn captures pawn at b4. White pawn captures pawn at b4. Black queen marches to d7. White pawn marches to b5. Black knight retreats to d8. White rook moves sideways to e1. Black knight marches to f7. White knight retreats to f3. Black rook moves sideways to c8. White pawn marches to e5. Black knight marches to d5. White bishop marches to b2. Black knight marches to e3. White queen marches to e2. Black knight captures pawn at c2. White rook moves sideways to c1. Black bishop marches to a2. White knight marches to c4. Black knight retreats to e3. White knight captures knight at e3. Black pawn captures knight at e3. White rook moves sideways to a1. Black bishop retreats to d5. White queen captures pawn at e3. Black rook captures rook at c1 and gives check. White rook captures rook at c1 and breaks check. Black rook moves sideways to e8. White queen marches to d4. Black rook moves sideways to d8. White knight retreats to e1. Black bishop retreats to f8. White queen captures bishop at d5. Black queen captures queen at d5. White bishop captures queen at d5. Black rook captures bishop at d5. White rook marches to c8. Black knight retreats to d8. White pawn marches to d4. Black knight marches to e6. White knight marches to c2. Black king marches to f7. White knight marches to e3. Black rook captures pawn at b5. White pawn marches to d5. Black rook captures bishop at b2. White pawn captures knight at e6 and gives check. Black king escapes check at e7. White pawn marches to h4. Black bishop marches to h6. White rook moves sideways to h8. Black king captures pawn at e6. White knight retreats to g2. Black rook retreats to b4. White rook moves sideways to e8 and gives check. Black king escapes check at f7. White rook moves sideways to h8. Black bishop captures pawn at f4. White knight captures bishop at f4. Black rook captures knight at f4. White rook captures pawn at h7 and gives check. Black king escapes check at e6. White pawn marches to h5. Black pawn captures pawn at h5. White rook captures pawn at b7. Black rook moves sideways to a4. White rook retreats to b5. Black rook marches to a2. White rook moves sideways to c5. Black pawn marches to h4. White rook retreats to c4. Black pawn marches to h3. White rook moves sideways to h4. Black king captures pawn at e5. White rook captures pawn at h3. Black pawn marches to a5. White king moves sideways to f1. Black pawn marches to a4. White resigns and black wins the game.